session, first session, Silver Lining for the Tech Industry in India in the New Normal. We'd like to thank our session partners, SugarBox Networks. We have a small video from SugarBox Networks for you. Let's have a look. Thank you. To know more about the speakers, you can download the show catalog from the upper tab on the right-hand side of the screen called the handout bags. Without further ado now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin the session, call it open, and I would hand it over to Mr. Kalra. All yours, sir.
Thank you, Steya. Thanks for really coordinating it, and setting the tone. And Amit, thank you very much for wonderful remarks. We'll surely miss a more interactive discussion with you. We would have loved to do that, but hope things are fine. And and wherever Amit is in Hyderabad, he's safe, and everybody is safe. Yeah. So coming back to the discussion, a very warm warning to all of you. Very warm warning to all my co-panelists. Sneha helped introducing all of you, so I won't do that anymore. We'll get the ball rolling. And also, since Amit really set the context first, so I won't really do a double talk on that. But yes, a few important things. I think it's a digital being all pervasive is something which is being spoken. And one point I want to touch upon here is the lines have really blurred out today. All of you on this panel and a lot of people in the audience, will have things to do with digital. But if I have to ask a fundamental question that what is digital and what is non-digital, that's a very difficult question to answer today. Whatever we do today will have an element of digital. So it is truly all pervasive. Whatever we do, and we will, while COVID has paced up, and beaten down to that term again in the millions of panels over last 12 to 15 months that COVID have led to an unprecedented pace of digital adoption. It is true, but what we would love to discuss today among all of us is that now that the basics are pretty much sorted out at most of the places, what is the future looks like? What is the next wave of adoption of digital? How do we really do things which are more exciting? And then one thing I would want to add to what Amit said is, on a different note, see, digital is good, but all of us are human at the end, right? So I think whatever we do in our digital journeys as business or as individuals, that human centricity, that human design, that human adoption is very, very vital. And then while there are certain industries where the digital leapfrog is inevitable, like media, I had been, just to introduce myself, I had been a partner with PwC for long and IBM for long, leading media entertainment sports for many, many years. So that's an industry which, really leapfrogs on digital adoption. They have been really at the forefront of it. But then there are many industries where there is a need today to do digital. I made a switch very recently in this week from my long, 15 years of media, in industry working to something very exciting, which is renewable energy. And I was bugged about it by the whole climate thing. What we are living, where we are living today, and what we are going to leave for future. And that opens up a very important question that in the entire digital journey, how responsible is the digital adoption? We talk about, there are a lot of research papers around responsible AI. While some of us or some of the people in the audience might be technologists, and we want to look at the art of possible on AI, the art of possible on data, the art of possible on many other emerging technologies. But the fundamental question would always remain that what is the responsible adoption of all these technologies? I think let's put together some of these notions also. There is almost every business today, and you would all know, almost every business today is under tremendous pressure on ESG. There is a deeper lens on that. There is a deeper sense of responsibility on ESG. So I think more we see it from a 30,000 feet and a macro view, and see that how the digital journeys, digital as a backbone, technology, the future of technology is in sync with the ESG and the environment, social governance, the larger ecosystem of businesses. So I think that's a great point. At some point in time, I would love to hear views from my co-panelists on this in their respective areas, how you see it. But coming back to this, maybe it will be good if we really quickly start with a round of opening thoughts from all of you. What do you really think? See, digital as a backbone is, as I said, is done and dusted. So if I would request, all of you, if we can do a very quick round the table opening remarks, that what in your view is a digital backbone means looking forward into the future. Not really past 18 months of COVID. That is gone. Looking forward into the future, what do you think it really means? So maybe we can start with Saurabh, because Saurabh, you are appearing on right in front of my screen. So Saurabh, any opening thoughts on this? And I love when you talk about future skills. This is so important, the future skill component for the larger workforce here. So Saurabh, over to you.
Thanks, Raman. I think to answer your question, and I'll keep it short, is that I think to a larger extent, the past, we can take cue from the past when it comes to defining the future, but the future is seemingly different. So a lot of studies in futurism have proved that there's absolutely zero correlation between past and future, as opposed to the entire fundamentals of data science, which talks about identifying patterns and using it to track the future. It just can't be done. It's an NP hard problem, which can't be done using the digital tools we have. Now, I think I would also say that to answer that question is that digital is very specific to a country or a geography's problem, right? And we have to first come out of our colonial hangovers and understand that India is a very different country from the Bay Area. So whatever we have picked up from there and we are trying to retrofit it here might not work out in most of the cases, right? And so Indian, when it comes to future skills, let's say the idea is to empower, almost close to 5 to 6 million Indians and upskill them and reskill them using emerging technologies and all that, right? But the fact is that today, if you see, 65 to 70% people stay in tier 3 and tier 4 cities, right? That's the actual ratio. So anything that we have built over the last 15 years, if I talk about product, we have actually catered to the sensibilities of the tier 1 and tier 1 and A class cities. So a lot of solution that we talk about in the future has to be developed for the entire India, as a subcontinent. So when you say digital, as I would like to cite an example of Estonia, which is probably the only most digital country in the entire world, and there every single thing that they do has become digital in some sense of the word. But in India, if you were to go by that, it would take, first of all, I think what you need to do is that you need to, instead of studying too much about technology and too much about products and too much about what we keep on studying here, we need to actually focus a lot on understanding history and anthropology, to understand more about what our country is exactly. And that's when, unless you understand your country better, I don't think you'll be able to devise digital solutions. And future skills is an attempt to do somewhat that, try to take a leap from the future and see if we can empower these many individuals. But let's see where it goes from here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the contextual relevance is always going to be by country, not even by country, by the micro segment and the macro segment both coming together, and that's where digital adoption changes, completely. Coming to Rohit, and we have two Rohits on the panel. So Rohit Paranjpe, I won't be able to call my first name on it. So Rohit P, SugarBox. You guys do a hyper local CD, and it kind of makes it whatever we talk about from a digital perspective, it makes it easier and more economical and better in terms of adoption. You want to throw some light on really what you guys do exactly in SugarBox, and how do you see this journey?
Sure, absolutely, Raman. So we actually look at it in a very different context, right? We look at it actually from a digital backbone perspective to say anything digital starts with connectivity, right? And if I really look at it, India, and not just India, the world in its entirety, typically you would see that there are certain regions and certain users that are able to afford to pay an X amount of money for connectivity. And stay in an area which aggregate between users is something called as a high revenue area or a high ARPU area, right, in telecom terms. And you will see that these are the areas where people will typically get seamless connectivity, right? Most of the tier 1 cities, most of the A cities fall into this category. But as you start moving deeper, because when we talk about a digital India or we talk about a digital world, you actually are saying anybody, anywhere that the person is should be able to seamlessly connect. And that is when the digital journey starts. And that is where we see all kinds of things breaking. I mean, I'll give you an example. Today we sit in Bombay and crib about the connectivity speeds that we get. I will give you an example of a village in UP East that I visited about a month back. This is a village which has about 1,500 people staying in it. Between these 1,500 people, the average uptime inside that village, which is how many hours a day do you get internet, is about 12 to 14 hours. So essentially 10 hours a day the village is dark. No connectivity works. No telco, no wireline, nothing works there. And even while that 12 to 14 hour connectivity is available, the typical speed between these 1,500 users vary, typically, and while the internet is up in that village, the typical speed is about 1 MB, oscillates between an Mbps to 10 Mbps between 1,500 people, right? So if you really go to see, it reminds us of the dial-up days where you would make a search and wait 5 seconds till the search result loaded, right? So sure, technically from telco terms, this village is connected, but is it really usable is the question, right? And that really becomes a bottleneck. I mean, and it's not just villages, right? You look at cities like or states like Goa, you look at states like Uttarakhand, nearly the entire northeast of India. If you look at Orissa as a state, I mean, these are states wherein if you leave the major cities, there literally is no reliable connectivity anywhere, right? So this is essentially the root cause of the problem, and if digital really has to take birth, and the way we say everything is going to be digital, literally every small retailer is going to move into some sort of a digitalized ecosystem at some point, so on and so forth. It's critical that the core infrastructure itself is able to carry things, right? And so at SugarBox, there are probably 2 or 3 things that we work on. First is how do you sort of figure out better ways to deliver data, so that you don't really need seamless connectivity at all times. That's where we have our phygital technology. The second part that we drive towards is, as digital is becoming a basic human necessity, right? We talk about food, clothing, shelter. Now there's a 4th necessity or a basic need called as the internet. People have to figure out ways and means in which we are able to shift the binary nature of the internet. So today what happens is you either have access to the entire internet or you don't have access to anything if you're unable to afford it or are in a place where it can't be reliably connected. How can you shift this base to say anywhere you are, whoever you are, even if you can't afford a connection, you still get access to a basic set of services, right? And whatever those basic set of services relevant to you are. And then the third part is, how do you sort of build an ecosystem around this? We are still talking about today. If we fast forward 10 years from today, you're going to have all sorts of smart devices that are going to be deployed everywhere. We as a user send one request in a second. These smart devices are going to send hundreds of requests per second. The requirements from infrastructure are going to scale up drastically. And so how do you sort of create smarter infrastructure so that it is able to handle this digital load that's going to be thrown at it? So I think that's a really interesting problem that we sort of work towards and try to build.
I agree with you, and I'll come back on this important point. So I think it's a very, very valid point that you touch upon, Rohit, and what you guys are doing is extremely relevant for true adoption of digital. It is the low latency, low bandwidth ability for the whole infrastructure and network to be able to do. We talk about rural upliftment. We talk about inclusive growth in the country. We talk about women empowerment in villages. All of that needs a degree of digital adoption. And given the infrastructure, it is so important that the low latency infra is in place for them to be able to do that. So I think that's in true sense what you guys doing creates a backbone of digital economy. For especially for a country like us. So I think I'll come back to you. That's a great point. Jitendra, coming to you on Ambab, and while I leave it to you to really have a quick snapshot on what exactly you do, but from a mobile engineering and the apps and the experience point of it, and then what Rohit spoke about on while you have one set of consumer, where if the bandwidth goes, if the network speed goes below 200 Mbps, you start calling Airtel's help desk that my speed is low, and then you have on the other side the other spectrum of it. In a true phygital world, how do you see this being getting adopted for you, and what is your experience, Jitendra, on the whole digital evolution on mobile?
Great. Raman, thank you very much. So I'll just give me a minute of talk about Ambab. So Ambab is a product engineering company. We are in business for last 13 years. We typically focus on digital transformation and also ideas to MVP kind of a roadmap for startups. Coming back to the question which you are asking, so just to add what Rohit was saying, actually we had a very different experience. Even though infrastructure is not ready and everything, and I don't want to cover the B2C part, but we are getting a huge inquiry and engagement from the B2B, manufacturing and wholesalers, who
Yeah.
are and who understood that okay, unless and until they don't digitize, it's going to be very difficult for them to sustain. So even, and they are not changing their business model. They don't want to go D2C directly to consumer, but they want to ensure that whatever they are manufacturing, the visibility of that particular products are there with their wholesaler, with the entire supply chain. And this, with the kind of limited infrastructure, they are able to kind of adopt because it's not a real time. They don't require to have a solution which is real time. Even if it is a 10 to 12 hours of connectivity, is more than enough for them to keep the business running. And what we have seen is that forget about sustaining in these COVID times where everybody was struggling. Some of the businesses which were early adopters and took up that challenge, saying that okay, let me invest some amount in this infrastructure, create some very simple applications in terms of digitizing the catalog. Forget about
Yeah.
everything, just digitizing the product catalog, right? And then WhatsApping the product catalog to their suppliers, buyers, and then buyers ordering over a phone, and then putting that in a kind of invoicing and everything. So they have gone through the entire journey, and we have seen huge adoption from the SME sector. Of course, I'm not talking about the large companies because they have that kind of a deep pockets to invest in technology. They are investing for a very long time. But in last 8 months, we have seen huge adoption from the companies which were not even thinking of going digital. They were very happy with doing a business traditionally. Somebody's calling, taking up on the note. They were not having even simple systems in place, or they were having systems which were like silos in a way, where 8, 10 systems were working for a simple product to come from factory to dispatch. Now they have a kind of understood that what is the importance of having a synchronized system in place where they can show that inventory is available, WIP, their ordering is happening online, even the logistics like B2C, the last mile, the end consumer is getting a visibility where his product is lying, when it's going to be there in his retail shop or in its whole its warehouse. So that way, I think we have seen a very different India altogether, where in fact, in respective of the infrastructural problems, they are adopting digital in a very aggressive manner.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a great point. B2B is and I'm glad you brought it up, Jitendra, because in most of the discussions, most of the panels or sessions, there is a tendency to get swayed to the direct to consumer side of transformation that is happening in the country, and we don't really talk so much about how the B2B environment and how the business environment is changing rapidly at the same time. So I think I'm glad you brought it up, and there are some such amazing startups doing that revolution, like Udan, for example. Udan has which is a direct to retailer B2B kind of a concept is completely transformed that, and likewise, there are so many B2B aggregator platforms who just bring the economy of scale for the businesses on the back of digital backbones. I think there are many use cases coming over there. So I'm glad you brought it up, Jitendra. Coming to Rohit, Dhar, upGrad, everybody knows about upGrad, and you guys have had phenomenal success, over last few years, and doing a terrific job. I always tell, I have been saying it for a long time now that the country needs so much more in the space of education, healthcare, agriculture, and climate. These four, these are my personal way of looking at things, and it is not to disrespect all the other industries where there is so much is happening really already, but these are the four areas where we as a nation or we as a as a global economy will stand to benefit so much. So Rohit, coming to you, upgrad is doing great work. And one of the theme of the discussion, which had been a digital divide, on as a country, you guys have really taken enabled education to the farthest corner of the country. The people, anybody sitting in the in extreme corners of the country with no access to education infrastructure, with no access to qualified faculty, with no access to anything, today have the option of living to their potential. And it really brings up the whole society. So Rohit, why don't we hear from you? How have you seen the what you guys are doing as upgrad to really bring about this change as an inclusive adoption in the country? Or any thoughts around that?
Sure, Raman. Thank you, Raman, for asking that question. First, thank you, Tech India Transformation, for inviting me in this convention. So, thanks a lot, guys, and having a great panelist here, members as well. So, I think Raman, I'll break this down into two parts, right? One, what upgrad has done, but before that, let me just talk about what we as an industry is all about, right? And it's a we. I don't mean the EdTech only, but overall as organizations, and this is going back to the other Rohit as well. There are three types of organizations if you think about, right? For one, the type A is an organization which does not understand technology, does not understand digital, and never will go down that path. Second, about type B is an organization which does not understand technology but does understand that technology is the way to scale. Yeah, and they were pseudo heading towards it before COVID, but during and post COVID, they're absolutely gung-ho about it and they're going down that path. And type C is they only understand technology, they know that technology is the only way to scale, and they are already in technology, and this is what we are, right? So these are the three types of organizations. Usually, type A organizations will continue to exist and probably slowly will diminish. If they don't move to type B. Type B will very quickly move to type C because that's the only way out. Else, type C will eat the lunch of type B, and type C is just going more aggressive and moving faster than they could ever move. We at upGrad are the type C type organization at this point in time, and we continue to be the type C guys. Everything is digital. Everything. If my laptop crashes right now, I can still connect with you on my mobile phone, and I will lose not a single data because everything is on my cloud. So that's how we have been organized. So that is the type of the organization. Now moving in terms of the EdTech and where upGrad has been able to make a small dent so far, and the intent is to make a larger dent. So I think EdTech is also going through the same transformation of type A, type B, type C. The EdTech is on the type C side, while there are certain universities and colleges and schools who have been in type B. They've quickly adopted and they've moved forward. But the type A colleges, schools have been literally shut down for the longest time, right? So that's where the education is. And when you attach the education with technology, I think during COVID or during and sort of post COVID, it has gone through the roof. I joined upGrad a year back. I think it was a very different world then, and a year later, it's a very different world now. The amount of users that are coming in, flocking onto our doors, the amount of growth that we're seeing, the amount of people taking online degrees, full-time online degrees, is just going through the roof. People are realizing and understanding and graduating and getting jobs. Every quarter, we have quadruple digits of people who are graduating and they are also getting jobs through us directly. And that's what we are looking at in terms of people graduating out of our full-time courses, which are degree courses, and then taking jobs. And where are they from? Kanpur, Lucknow, Katihar, but far parts of Tamil Nadu. I cannot imagine the smaller cities that they are from, and the accessibility of education, the affordability of education, and the relevance of education. Effectively, all three pillars that I always think of when I think of education The education needs to be relevant, it needs to be accessible, and the most important, affordable. If it is relevant and accessible, but it is not affordable, there's no point of having them. So ensuring all three are in place is what upGrad has been able to help us with, and ensuring that there is growth in the career path of the learner. So growth in terms of transition, which means if they're moving from one job to another, or a brand new job, or an acceleration where they're in the current job, they're moving forward, or professional confidence, which means every day I come into office, I don't enjoy it because I think I can do much better. And now at this point in time, I am looking forward to learning some skills, so I can implement those skills on my daily job and learn and actually perform better. That's for professional confidence. So there's a lot I think we have been able to do with launching multiple courses, Ivy Leagues, IIT Mumbai, Triple IIT Bangalore, all of these associations. I think this has really helped us to make an ecosystem of higher degree education for working professionals and for students who are 12th grade pass students. So this is what we have done so far. Now we're heading towards also short form of content, which is 5-minute to a 40-minute to a 1 hour, 20-minute masterclasses as well, which will help you kind of get quick skills and ensure that you implement it on a day-to-day basis. So that's the ecosystem that we're trying to build. We'll see how that goes. Keeping our fingers crossed. But I think
you guys are doing terrific work. I'll give an example, Rohit, on that. About 6-7 years back, I was advising an EdTech company, basically an EdTech offshoot of a traditional publishing company. So it was a small EdTech offshoot. And I was sitting with the board, and I told the board that we really want to go aggressive on EdTech. And one of the first generation board member tells me that Raman, you don't understand. In our country, in villages, far remote places, people don't have any facility. How will they really learn on mobile? You are living in a wishful world. And I gave an example. Who had thought a few years back that in our country, with the success of Uber and Ola, if you really flash back a few years back and say that people who are not very well literate will be able to run an entire business of running a taxi or a few taxi or a fleet of taxis on Ola and Uber on an app successfully. Because if you really do a survey of average literacy quotient among the Ola Uber drivers, it will be very low. It will be a revealing fact that the literacy levels are very, very poor in that segment, but it hasn't stopped them from adopting this revolution and doing it very, very successfully. So I think that was the analogy that I used to give at that time. So I think you guys are doing a great job. Coming to you, Reuben, I know you have been patiently waiting. It does happen sometimes. We will get more interactive from here onwards. But Reuben, you guys work a lot. As I understand, you guys work a lot on the phygital world, on the omni-channel retail world. And there's so many brands, which are consumer brands who in last 2 years have launched direct-to-consumer brands in addition to the physical supply chain model that they had. And they have tasted immense success on that. And then there are also likes of people like you, who are into cosmetic and beauty business, skincare business, like, clinics and all, who are also launching a phygital model. So look, if automotive, Mahindra launches Dhar, it was a pure phygital launch, that they did. So any business that we look at today in any industry, the phygital is a world to go to. You can't have a pure physical, approach of penetration and growth. You also, while you can have a pure digital, but it is best to really marry the two, especially in a country like us. So what are your thoughts, Reuben, on how this shape is evolving and how digital is really disrupting the space for the growth of enterprises? Reuben, you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Raman. We all agree that success for any business is about delivering a great experience. And one aspect is very clear in spite of COVID and the great forward to which the digital businesses or digital commerce is growing, physical is not going to go anywhere. At Rezolve, we are a unique platform that delivers what we believe is the future of consumer experience. What we offer is instant access, instant engagement, and what we call as instant transaction. culminating to what a great customer experience is. We have the unique ability of digitizing all assets, including humans, so humans can be tracked, which means via proximity-based geofences, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's BLEs, uh, and assets like media, assets like posters, assets like your physical stores, all can be digitized to offer a live engagement for a potential consumer or anyone who's in the service or physical being. So that's broadly what our company does. Bringing on to omni-channel, end of the day, uh, it's the idea about creating or blending a new way of engagement. It's not, like you rightly said, it's not about uh, being a digital solution or a physical solution. Nowadays, there is no physical, and we all mentioned that the divide is getting blurred. But there is one thing even today is very distinct, which connects the physical and the digital. That's the mobile. So that's the connecting piece, and most engagements and most solutions are coming from how do we make this mobile as versatile as possible to ensure uh, experiences are delivered seamlessly. Uh, yes, mobile is something which is coming in and making humans more human or less human is our things which are very open to perspective and discussion. Coming on to the point where Raman, you mentioned that we're all humans. Immediately, my question popped up saying, "What does that mean? What does human being humans actually mean?" If I just
Yeah.
look around, uh, humans are wearing. There's wearables market which is zooming. There's hearable market which is zooming. Smart watches, smart clothing are taking shape, and these are not something which have happened in the last 6 months. They've been happening for the last many years. Uh, People are injecting chips into their bodies to keep track of where they're going, keep tracking of where you want to enter, what kind of services you want to avail of. And people are injecting even cholesterol eating nanorobots to bring cholesterol down. So that's the level. So are we humans anymore in the classic definition? Maybe not. There's a whole lot of evolution happening in terms of that definition itself. And when we say technology, and on one side, technology itself is evolving and re-evolving itself to gather more human traits, whether it's the Alexa of the world, to Google, to Sophia, they're all blending towards a synergistic humanoid kind of evolution. This is just a thought-provoking for the panel and, of course, the audience to think about. Saurabh had mentioned, are there patterns? I mean, these are the only patterns I get to see, that the patterns which are evolving are not what we would believe that we want to be as humans. That species itself is evolving, and the technology species is evolving towards what we define as, or what we visualize as, what a human needs to be. Omnichannel is something, once we keep track of all these, is when we will be able to deliver great experiences. So like I said, if you convert a wall into a physical a digital asset which is transactable, that kind of opens out an entirely new channel of access. So distribution in its classical avatar is still driving business across the globe. How many route planning happens, how many Kirana stores have you visited, all that is happening. And then on the likes of the other side is where you have the digital interfaces coming through Shopify or 3D cart. That's a huge headless commerce which is emerging. If you blend all these two, in the center, again, like all of us agree, is the customer. And that once we keep the customer's convenience, delivering a great experience is all about speed, convenience, reliability, and the most important, of course, I'm sure the panel will go, is about relevance, which is what we call as customer 360 degrees. I'll leave it to that, and I think there'll be more insights coming from the rest of the panel to pick it up from there.
Yeah, no, thanks, Reuben. I couldn't agree more on everything that you said. Sort of a quick one, from a skill perspective. Did you see? What do you think? Do you think how good are we doing as a nation? How good are we doing as a nation, or enterprises, or businesses? But more importantly, I would want to hear more as a nation point of view on the right skills for the future, growth of nation. What is the thought on that? Because digital adoption is fine, but from a skill perspective, whether it is from schools and colleges and professional ventures and other areas, and there is a crossover to Rohit on upGrad on that, who are doing a great job on it. But any views on really, where are we and what's needed to be done on that?
See, as we are marching slowly towards the innovation economy, all that we end up seeing is that a deficit of skills. We need people with certain skills who can actually use those skills to produce a viable outcome. And that's where we see a deficit in the industry as well as outside the industry in the student community. Because to a larger extent, the education system in India is molded in such a way that it does not, it does not help the kid basically solve a problem, right? So we don't have a problem-solving nation per se, right? So that, and I think the basic problem is because we don't really know exactly what are the skills that we need to teach people, right? Today we are talking about a lot of technology skills, a lot of soft skills and all, but what are the relevant skills as Reuben was talking about? Relevance. So in a world where the half-life of every skill is between 6 months to say 1 year, what are you going to teach people that is going to be relevant to them for the next 5 years? And
when Rohit talked about type A, type B, type C kind of enterprises, and this is Rohit Dhar, when he was mentioning about, there is a significant type A enterprises that exist in the country. What do you think? You think, and from a NASSCOM perspective, from an industry voice perspective, do you think that there is enough being done on skill upgradation of those traditionally run enterprises to really adopt to the future? Otherwise, they just exchange. They just disappear over a period of time. Are you seeing that sensitization? Are you seeing some real action being taken on that?
No, surprisingly, a lot of these non-tech companies are actually interested in upskilling. So I would not like to argue too much on that, but I think Rohit, I typically see two categories. One category is typically industries which were not very techno savvy per se, and the other are industries which were basically technical, right? But surprisingly, what we have seen is that a lot of these non-tech companies have started embracing technology in a big way. And most of the requests that come to us is basically from non-tech companies who want us to upskill them or upskill their crowd and all that. So we are seeing some sort of a tectonic shift in terms of what these non-tech companies used to behave a decade back or 2 decades back from how they're behaving right now. And I think sooner or later, everybody has to understand that, as we are moving towards technology, there's no other way out other than upskilling your audience in technology so that you can basically be part of the digital parlay, if I can use that lingo. But to answer your question, we have seen a huge tectonic shift from non-tech sector who are interested particularly in upskilling their employees and who are also interested in picking up tech. So today, if you see, the company that actually hires a lot of data scientists, the largest amount of data scientists actually hired is by Shell, not by Facebook, or is by Shell Corporation, right? So typically you'll see a lot of these patterns which were not coming up a decade back, but today you see that. So today a lot of machine learning work is being hired by 20th Century Fox, right? You would never expect a production house to hire machine learning engineers or data engineers. So these kind of...
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
So essentially to answer your question, yes, at FutureSkills, what we have done in one line, if I were to sum it up, is we have taken a very different approach. We have created standards with the help of the industry, and we have given those standards to every skill that is required by the industry, and we have curated not everything, but courses aligned to those standards. So anything that is taught by the academia is basically something that students will be taught, and the same skills would be required by the industry for an interview or for. So we are making them job.
I agree. And Rohit, on a lighter tone, Rohit was saying ABC because he said then very politely that we are at C, and he also made a statement that C will acquire B. So I think somewhere his mind is going on what are the acquisitions he can look at from the A and B segment. So I think leaving that aside for the time being, Jitendra, you spoke a brilliant part on B2B adoption of digital. The growth of that industry is so important for for the nation's growth. Are you seeing any innovative things coming up into there, or if I have to ask you, looking forward, let's say 5 years from now, how do you see that segment really evolving and adopting digital?
Yes. Before I answer that question, I would just wanted to add what Saurabh said is that currently also all the requirements which are coming to us from the B2B, the biggest challenge for them is to get the skilled people, right? From the strategy to execution. And that's where the biggest struggle is. And I think as an industry, we need to somehow come out with a solution where the simplest of the trainings are provided to these people. And these people are in tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4 cities. And they are really, really aggressive, really want to change the way they are doing business. Now, coming back to your current questions, what we have seen, what Saurabh also mentioned earlier, right? We need to find solutions which are Indianized. Typically, today the solutions are more kind of copied from what is happening in the Western region, right? So we have to Indianize the entire solution. So the regional language in terms of communication as a part of solution or the part of application is going to be a very, very important role going ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree, but at the same time, any do you see when we talk of digital, one is that I just do my current business more efficiently, much better, and the other is that I really use digital technologies, cloud, and many other areas to really transform and innovate into a completely new business model disrupting. So any disruptive behaviors, any examples around disruptive behaviors which you see Jitendra coming out of it?
So one of the disruptive behavior rather than a different model what we have seen from one of the manufacturer who has kind of integrated IoT in his entire business model. So he made that dumb machine smart by putting sensors and capturing the data. Now what he is doing is that he has introduced, previously it was one time sale and that's it. Right now every time the machine used to go into the scrap. But what he figured it out that when he has all the data available with him, he can actually value the machine after 5 years, saying that yes, what I can use from this particular machine, what parts I can reuse to build new machine, and that's why he was able to give a fair price to the user also, where the repurchase value was much higher than anybody else was doing, and he was also able to get most out of it because he was knowing, because the sensors and everything, which part is kind of used maximum, which part is torn out, which part is really usable without doing anything. So those kind of a data insight, those kind of analytics, people have started doing it. Also remote management in terms of AMC, right, which is happening now. Previously engineers used to go there and do everything. So predictive analytics and predictive management in terms of machines basically, which is happening, and that's the area where people are predictive analytics is something which I feel is something which is going to be future for the entire B2B structure as well as for the B2C also.
Yeah.
Because we have seen those kind of inquiries, and a lot of applications which we are building today are based on these entire predictions.
Yeah, no, I agree. Reuben, coming back to you, and I won't make you wait long at this time. So coming back to you, there are a lot of, as I said, there are a lot of brands which have launched direct-to-consumer products. Especially in the last 2 years. Even the traditional selling brands have a vertical, which are purely direct-to-consumer marketing, direct-to-consumer supply chain, and they are not going through the physical shelf space of retail. Which used to be the mantra in the past that "Jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai." So kind of there is a shift on that. And since you guys work so much on the retail space, omni-channel e-commerce, any examples, any thoughts on how really that business growth is being achieved, and on the back of this trend?
See, yes, you picked up on an interesting topic which is being talked about for a while. Interestingly, there's a lot of work happening. There's a lot of attention in this. To be honest, in terms of traction, let's talk about smaller. Let's take. I'll plot this into two buckets. See, let's talk about the digital engagement piece for likes of Facebook or Instagram. We've started social commerce now. Social commerce is talked about in such a large way, but even today, Instagram commerce is still restricted to 3% or less. If my numbers are not correct, it's still in low single digits. So, is it a potential area where traction is going to happen? Yes, it is. But to really scale it up, a lot of other technology, experience-driven solutions need to come in. While on the other hand, the fintech solutions, in my belief, has actually driven the digital commerce significantly faster than any other solution. But the Kirana store today scans the easy QR code across, whether it's Google, whether it's Paytm, whether it's PhonePe. That little trigger that the Kirana store or any shopper has today opens out a digital interface which was not there maybe 18 months ago. That direct to consumer access uh, uh, is what is driving digital engagements with the consumer rather than anything else. Coming back to points which Saurabh had also mentioned, and as well as Rohit, in terms of when we scale up to smaller towns, what is the digital capability? This is where organizations like Spice Money and a lot of others, it's Google, have also taken it and they have identified this problem and they are working on solutions which work with low internet connectivity scenarios, offline scenarios where transactions can still happen. So even using feature phones to a 2G phone typically, and we all sitting in bigger cities are used to 4G and 5G networks, we do not know, we know about it, but we don't really experience it day in and day out in terms of what it means to take a phone and look for signals, or it just goes buffering all the time. But there are basic functions which need to work effectively. It means my money has to go from here to there. If that can happen, I think 75% of Indian fundamental need to engage is taken care of, and that's broadly what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. And it's well said, Reuben. Rohit and Rohit Dhar, see, there used to be a saying normal that the digital economy push will heavily depend on three V's, which is voice, video, and vernacular. Besides many other things, but voice, videos, and vernacular are very important. And when I look at what you guys do and the kind of demographic profile that we as a nation have got across the country, the skill enhancement and the education and the other areas, these three will play a very critical role. What do you think? And all these three, have to really have a very strong digital enablement coming out in the right space. What do you think about?
Go ahead, Rohit. Rohit, why don't you go ahead?
All right. So there are multiple different facets, and it's very difficult to isolate one or the other. Right? I think if you really look at the broad digital ecosystem, I would probably say that three aspects. Right. The first is the awareness of what is possible. Right. And I'll start with a very simple example. The first thing that we did about a year and a half back is we went to villages and asked people, what is the internet? Right. Let's start from there. And the simplest answer, the most common answer that you will get anywhere in India is WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Or WhatsApp, YouTube, TikTok. And this literally is what the internet was, right? So it really starts from awareness in terms of people don't know what is the internet or what can be done with it, right? The second, obviously, is then the skills to be able to utilize or maximize the utilization of it, right? I think we speak a lot about products for India or products for Bharat, right? Or let's again, somebody on the panel made a point saying, products are built for probably the top 100 million people in India or probably the top 10% of the world.
Google is the best example on that. Google made a big shift in the strategy in the last few years. Now it is made for India, made in India for the world. If you really follow Google over especially last 3 to 5 years, a lot of their products and innovations are coming out of India, made in India, made for India, adopted by the world. I think that is really changing big time. Sorry, Rohit.
Absolutely, Raman. And maybe going forward, that is how a lot of people will have to start looking at it. I mean, I'll give you an experience and an example. We went down to the grassroots with a leading OTT provider, right? So pretty much OTT penetration in India is zero beyond the top tier 1 to 3 cities. And we thought it's a no-brainer. I mean, everyone is going to lap up content that they anyways watch on TV. Now we're enabling them to watch it on devices. And we are running a sort of a pilot program where it was available to them for free. They didn't have to pay for data. It was seamless. You typically get like 100 Mbps. So experience is not a problem. And we saw that the consumption was near zero, right? And then when we went and started talking to people, this is the simplest sort of experience gaps that exist, right? we asked them, why is it that you're not using it? And their answer was, we don't know what to use. And when we tried to dig deeper, we're like, okay, so what would you use? And they're like, please understand what we as customers are used to, right? We are used to going to a kirana wala and giving them our phone. The kirana wala dumps 10 movies on my phone, and now I watch one of the 10 movies, right? This is my experience and what I am used to. Now you are giving me an OTT app where I have to figure out how to browse and how to search and how to discover content, right? This is not something that I am used to, and I am already. So there's also a big sort of psychological barrier in terms of, it seems like a Herculean task to understand technology, right? That's also the mindset of people who are not techno savvy or not used to technology. And I think these are a lot of different nuances that will have to be factored in as we start scaling beyond the top 100, 200, 300 million people. So this is a very, very interesting sort of problem that we have sort of stumbled upon. I think the second part of the problem is, and maybe not a problem, but something that would really spark digitization as we move forward, is the way the Indian digital ecosystem has been built. Right, there's very few collaborations that we really see at an industry or an ecosystem level. Right, and I think that is one of the biggest parts that we as a company are also trying to create, saying how do you figure out a way in which the entire ecosystem goes to people rather than every single, because if you look at problems like awareness, right, for any one company to go solve an awareness problem is excessively expensive. It's nearly impossible to do. But it's very easy for an ecosystem to pool its resources together and go create awareness, go educate, break the barriers, upscale people. There are multiple different sort of cases that come into the picture. So just putting a very, very different point of view out there.
No, I agree. I agree and disagree. I disagree on the first part, which is the adoption part of it, because I always believe that we Indians are the ones who are most adoptive of any change that gets thrown onto us. We are the one community in the world who adopt the fastest. We find out our way that kya karna hai, kaise karna hai, and we just get the ball rolling. So I think that's the beauty of this, whatever we as Indians. So, but I completely agree with that it's a challenge, content discovery, it's a problem of plenty. You get lost out, then then just give it up, then you don't adopt it so well. And I won't get there because I have been dealing with the media challenges for the last 15 years. So I want to refrain me getting passionate about media right now. But Rohit, the point I want to now bring on to you is, because digital and the technology has got various facets, and you have to really make it relevant for the right kind of demographic details again. So, do you see the trends of upskilling, education, and others, which are maybe purely voice enabled, which are completely vernacular, which are based on videos, which are so depending on where do I stand as an individual, which part of the country, my literacy level, my comfort, my gadget, my instrument, it is a video supporting instrument or not. So how do you see that mix coming up?
Yeah. So Raman, all those words that you said is called a persona.
Yeah, correct. I don't know to throw a jargon, but yes.
Yeah, it's a target audience. It's the audience that you are building a product or a service for. So let me just zoom out again and then zoom back in. Whenever you're building something for someone, and there is something with a product or a service, for someone is a customer, that you need to first understand what that customer's needs are, not wants, needs. What is the problem you're looking at? If you think of India, Raman, in our conversation, we are mixing a lot of things together. Like Hindi में कहते हैं तो खिचड़ी बना रहे हैं हम लोग, जो segregate नहीं कर रहे. So I'm going to just segregate it so that we all understand. When we talk about metro and tier 1, we are talking about the top notch of the tier, which means their infrastructure is absolutely out there, and we have to just connect the plug. I literally have no internet right now at home, but you don't feel that at all because I have 4G that I'm just connecting with and I'm moving ahead. Right. Similarly, the second segment is tier 1, tier 2, where there is network there, but not that great. And then comes tier 4 of the world, which is where I'm calling the NBU. Yeah, which is the new billion users, right? What is told about Google, they're focusing on the last segment, which is the NBU, which is the new billion users. Effectively, they have no understanding of how internet works. Exactly what you said. no understanding of what internet is all about, and that segment of customers you're trying to address or build a product or a service for, first understand what their needs are and what their day-to-day problems are, and then from there you start building products, not the other way around, right? And we can't
Yeah.
expect one problem, one solution to another segment. So going back again, so these are three segments of users. At upGrad or at many other, I would say EdTech, I don't think they're addressing, at least many of the EdTech, the higher EdTech, we're addressing the NBU at all. What we're addressing at this point in time, we're addressing the middle tier and probably the top tier. That's all we're addressing. Middle tier also very bare minimum, right? There's a long way to go to address the middle tier. We're majorly addressing the top tier, yeah, which is where we're bringing in IIT, Delhi, Triple IT, Bangalore, all of those. The bottom NBU, they don't care. They care about fundamentals, right? The पेट में भूख हो रही हो तो पढ़ाई कौन सोचता है? So and creativity.
But वहीं तो पढ़ाई लेके जानी है ना, so that the social upliftment happens.
So Raman, that is what I'm saying. If that is the intent, तो धंधा बनाने की नहीं सोचते हैं. दोनों नहीं होगा. सोशल अवेयरनेस करना तो धंधा नहीं बनाते हैं, क्योंकि टॉप में जो बैठा है ना वो तो वैल्यूएशन सोच रहे हैं, वो तो धंधा सोच रहे हैं, वो धंधे के हिसाब से सोचेंगे और बोलेंगे इन्वेस्ट नहीं करेंगे, और नीचे का एनबीयू को काम करेंगे और उसमें हम इन्वेस्ट नहीं करेंगे, वो तो होगा नहीं.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing. I know that you need to make money, so you have to focus on the top two layers.
So which is where Raman, give me a couple of minutes and I'll maybe 30 seconds I should finish. So I think the fundamentals are, we need to first focus on the top tier where the adoption is much higher. If you get that adoption higher, your proof of the pudding is in eating it. You get the validation, you know that this is making sense. Supply चल रहा है, demand चल रहा है, सब कुछ चल रहा है, everything is working out. Then you go to segment 2, which is effectively the moderate segment. We have English is there, but it's moderately available. Sometimes it bounce off, but it's still there. And then when you push through the masses, now you already have so much of learning. Your point of view will change. Video, vernacular, and audio. That's what we do out. So video vernacular works beautifully in the second segment. Vernacular will work on the third segment. Vernacular will not work on the second and the first segment. The second and first segment are more attuned to English content when they'll have to tap onto. So it's a very different beast than the bottom layer that you're talking about. Where you have to change the business point of view, where you're saying सारा content जो है ना, up north के लिए हिंदी में करते हैं, down south के लिए चार regional languages में करते हैं, सारा navigation change करते हैं, सारा infrastructure change करते हैं, सारा customer service change करते हैं. All of this is a huge investment for an organization, which the organization needs to have a huge guts to move forward and not looking at ROI for 3 years. I don't think apart from Google, anyone has that guts to move forward and address the NBU without not making sure कि मेरा धंधा चल रहा है ना, bread butter आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है.
I think one way to do that is the collaboration of people like you and people like the agrochemical companies and for example UPL does significant work on farmer education and farmer upliftment and the farmer income upliftment by providing education at the ground level. Now so there is a financial monetary interest with a lot of these companies. There is a platform which is a far superior platform that you guys have. I think we kind of create the right ecosystem where there is money to be made also, and at the same time it addresses that bottom layer. I think we as a nation will have a much more adoption of digital in a more holistic manner. But having said that, I completely agree with you. It's an evolution. It's an evolution which happens over a period of time, and I'm sure it will happen here also. Yeah. For example, Hindustan Unilever did some phenomenal marketing initiatives about 5-6 years back. On voice call. You call and you get a complete download and information on something.
Raman, does that happen today?
Yeah, a lot of that is happening even today also.
Consistently.
Farmers, a lot of you will be surprised to see how many farmers in the country are adopting and using some of these digital techniques.
So Raman, I'm sorry.
No, so Raman, I think what I'm
Sorry, you're saying something.
Sorry,
So
Saurabh, go
I
ahead.
probably agree with Rohit. I would like to disagree with you because I was basically in UP East for almost 12, 13 months, working with an NGO trying to create micro entrepreneurs in, let's say, a place like Deoria and and Gorakhpur and all that region. And I think what I understood was that there is a lot of focus on creating micro enterprises and micro entrepreneurs. But the guys, we actually visited around 300, 400 villages, and what we understood is that the basic average income in a particular day, per capita per day, is around $3, right? So you're making $3 and you have no seed capital to start a business, then how can you become an entrepreneur? So I think the lot of ideas that we keep talking about
Saurabh?
are very far-fetched and they have absolutely no connection to reality, which is seemingly different in villages.
Saurabh, you will be surprised. I don't know if you're following or not. You'll be surprised to see the number of agri services tech startups who are addressing the same community of $3 or less than $3 and are being valued at $100 million, and they are getting all the excitement from the venture capitals. So you will not have a revenue generation from there. But this is a debate for some other time. But the point is, so let's come back to it. I think we all get swayed sometimes over here. But coming back to, I think I'm getting conscious of interest. We got 1 minute left. I don't have the host with us. I don't know. I don't see any way where we can see any audience questions. I don't know how many audience we have. But that apart, one thing maybe a very quick rapid fire, 30-second each of you. Give me one. A crystal ball gazing 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line that you think will happen or should happen. Saurabh,
5 years down the line, we might actually become a global talent hub for the entire world to consume. That's what I can see for now.
super. We are on way there, happening big time. Yeah. Rohit, Paranjpe.
Oh, interesting. So I think 5 years down the line, everything that we are sort of talking about right now will sort of unfold in reality, right? We talk about concepts like phygital, omni-channel. I think all of that would sort of play out in reality. I mean, they're very interesting things that can possibly happen. I mean, if you're talking 5 to 10 years, you're actually talking about flying cars. You're actually talking about self-driven cars. You're actually talking about people going to outer space, maybe even staying there.
Okay, you went.
The world is moving at a very quick pace,
You went
right?
15 years ahead. Okay, Jitendra Joshi.
No, it will happen in the next 10. I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to take 15. From an intra perspective, I mean, everything that is happening, I honestly believe virtualization. So I really believe the last decade was about cloud computing, right? And this decade is pretty much going to be about something, the one part that is now called as edge clouds, which is essentially distributed
Yeah,
smart.
quick, Rohit, 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay, Jitendra.
Yeah, so I think everything smart, which is digitized, I think is going to be there, whether it's a B2B, B2C, the way of life is going to be smart. And that's what I see after 5 years, where we'll be
We'll all
more
look much
lazy.
more smarter in 5 years.
Smart, the life will be smarter, we will be, as individuals, will be very lazy.
I like that, which is ironical. Yeah, Rohit, sir.
I ditto Jitendra. We will be perceived as we are smarter, but we as individuals will be way more lazier than we can ever imagine. And
I'm
and I think-
glad this voice is coming up. Reuben.
absolutely.
For me, what we've been dabbling about, because I'm picking up data privacy here, I think over the next 5 years, the definition and perspective on data privacy is going to change. I think the principles of reciprocity will come in and people will actively seek safe rating of locations and sites rather than only about personal information. I think the philosophy will change from personal safety, that is physical safety, with data privacy as an optional scenario rather than data privacy alone. That's what I'm seeing. I think the next 5 years perspectives of people would significantly change.
Super. I think that's great, and I'll add my personal perspective of next 5 years. I personally feel that there'll be a big shift of digital adoption in areas that matter. The areas that matter the most for the community, the world, make people more human. Coming to Rohit and Jitendra, your point, not lazy. I moved away from media as a consulting after 15 years because I felt that the world is not going to crash if we spend 3 hours on Netflix in a day versus 5 hours in a day. Should I really make somebody consume 5 hours in a day on Netflix or not is a big question. Now, if my media friends listen me out, they'll call me and kill me for that. But But the fact is that there are a lot of areas where we do not need too much of digital happening now. And there are many areas where we need digital happening. And that's my personal shift. When I joined Renew Power last week, I think the green energy, the carbon emissions, the education, what Rohit, you guys are doing on upGrad, or the healthcare, and we debated so much, Saurabh, on agriculture. But take my word, that's a space where India will stand to benefit a lot, and a lot will happen on these spaces. So I think on that note, I think it was a great discussion. I'm conscious of time. Any Sneha, do we have any questions from audience or anybody?
We do not have questions exactly, but we do have certain comments that are
Okay.
here. There is one question which is, right point, sir, please tell us what are your views on Neuralink, like injecting chips into the body? Do we have any scope for this in India? This is the only question. Apart from these are all comments appreciating the views that we've received so far.
Yeah, so I have my views, but anybody want to talk about?
Yes, I can make a statement. This trend has been picking up for the last couple of years, and especially in the area of medicine, the lots of areas specifically to control cholesterol, a lot of other areas. So lots of development is happening, and people are actually pushing themselves as humans to offer themselves for the experiments. Just to give you a statistics here, more than 10,000 people in Stockholm have injected chips inside their body. That's a reference, and there are enough number of people using computer-aided artificial limbs and stuff like that. So this is happening, and this is not going to go away.
Yeah, so we will have indicators on our wrist that how much life is left and what we need to do to do something else. There was a movie on that. I don't remember the name of that movie, but yes, I think the true adoption of that, if and when it grows, should be for the betterment of humanity and not for fun purposes. I think that the responsible part there becomes a very important role in what I would say.
Absolutely, and
I think
I'll just look it down.
That is,
Sorry, I just take 10 seconds. Reuben, absolutely aligned, buddy. This is what's going to happen in future.
Yeah.
We have already gone to Apple Watches, from Apple Watches to chips. It's just a matter of time, and it's going to happen. There'll be few people, old people like us, who might say, you know what, I'm going to just take the Apple Watches. Our next generation, as in me. But next generation is definitely getting into chips, for sure.
Yes, humans to humanoids for sure.
all right. So I think on that note, Sneha, you were saying.
I do have one more question. Can I show the question? Yes. So this is from Shweta Vedant, learning equity research and trying to understand IT sector. She says, my question is how to safeguard and secure from internet frauds and hackers for one average individual who is basically unaware.
Yeah, I think cyber security and frauds are going to grow significantly more and more. And if I talk about my last 4 years at PwC, the fastest growing consulting practice we had was cyber security, and it's true for everybody. The organizations are investing a lot into it. But having said that, what is good to see is that right at the level of schools, my daughter goes to a school. Even they get training imparted on cyber security. So there is enough awareness and education happening on it at schools, colleges, forums, and after that it will have to be really the basics of fundamental responsibility in the hands of individual. I think this is not going to go anywhere. We will have to live. On one side we are talking about chips getting inside the body, and then we are talking about also the frauds, and so I think it's an evil world we are going to live into. We'll have to learn to live how to live. That's my view. Yeah. And there, of course, solutions are there, but my 1 point answer to that could be educate a little bit more, get the fundamentals 101 of cybersecurity. That's essential for everybody today. Kids or any society, get the basic training on that and then follow that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for conducting this session so beautifully, moderating it so wonderfully, Mr. Kalra. I must tell, this was highly enlightening, and can I also add, very, very entertaining to see such varied and informative views from all our speakers. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, one more time. Thank you to all our speakers.
Thank you all the panelists.
And our session partner, SugarBox Networks. Before we go, let's end our first session with SugarBox Networks video. Once again, thank you to all our speakers, all our panelists, and Mr. Kalra. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's have the video
Thank
Thank you, Sneha.
from SugarBox Networks.
Thanks, everyone.